In today's day, there has been a flood of subscription services across all media. You got your Netflix, Hulu, Disney, Spotify, iTunes, etc., to the point that it becomes so overwhelming and your wallet gets smaller and smaller and smaller, right? Today, I want to go over the 3 big video game subscription services between Xbox, PlayStation, and Nintendo, to see which service is the best one once and for all, right? Whether you are thinking of joining or you already have the service and want to know how much it has changed compared from the past, because yes, it's changed a lot. So we're going to go over the pros and cons of each service, right? And we're going to start with the Nintendo Switch Online. Nintendo Switch Online has 2 tiers. You have your basic service for $20 a year individually, or the family plan for $34.99 a year. And in this basic package, it just allows you to play games online, but you also get the NES app, SNES app, and Game Boy games with the package. Every time they add more games to the service, you get to play more from the NES, SNES, and Game Boy. And finally, you get those Nintendo Switch game vouchers that go towards digital game purchases that they recently added to the service. Then you have the Nintendo Switch Online Plus Expansion Pass tier for $49.99 individual, or family plan for $79.99 a year. And with this package, you get to play online. Obviously the same thing, you get to play online for your games. You also get the NES, SNES, and Game Boy, just like the basic one. But you also get added more with Sega Genesis, N64, and Game Boy Advance, which they just added recently, right, to the service, and also add on to those digital vouchers that you could also get on this tier. So now let's go over the pros and cons. We know the pricing, let's go over the pros and cons. In my opinion, this is the most affordable service out of the 3, and the reason behind this is because of the family plan, right? So basically what that is, it shares the service between 7 other accounts. So if you have 7 friends or family members, you can split the payment for the year, which becomes really cheap in the long run, right? All the games that you get on the service, they might not be modern games, but what I really like about this service, or the games they add, is that every game they add that had multiplayer back in the day, right? Whether it's from the Game Boy Advance, NES, or whatever the case, every game that had local back then, you could actually play online with your friends, which is really cool because most of these retro games only had local multiplayer. They never had back then, online, because that wasn't a big thing back then, right? So it's a great way to play these games, these nostalgic games, with your friends like you did back in the day, because let's be real, everyone's busy now. You can't really go to your friend's house and play locally. Everything's more online and stuff like that. So to get these retro games back and also add that online feature to play with your friend that you played back then, I think that's a really neat touch. And it feels a little bit like they remastered every single game that they put on the NSO because of that aspect. When the service started, there wasn't a lot of games added. It was basically the most generic service. It didn't really have any competition and stuff like that. But now they've been adding more and more and more in the service throughout the years, and I won't be surprised when the Switch 2 comes out, they would add even more, like, let's say GameCube games, right? DS games, like, you never know, right? I could see that happening, where they just keep adding on and on, especially the GameCube games that a lot of people are nostalgic for, right? Because I think what Nintendo's doing right now is remastering or remaking every GameCube game that they want to, put their time into it and remaster, and then for the rest of the GameCube games, just add them to the service. That's a huge possibility that would happen based on things that we've seen with the NSO throughout the years. Now, for the cons of this service, like I mentioned before, you mostly it's all retro games, so you don't really get those modern games that the other services have. And then the other bad thing is, if you have no one to share your service with, then yeah, it might be too pricey for the individual plan if you're not really interested in those retro games. So it's better off you just get the basic just to play online if you really want to, right? And also another bad thing, or it might be bad how you see it, where unlike the PlayStation or Xbox, we never know when they're going to add games to the service. It could be every month, every 2 months. We just don't know, right? They don't have a set schedule of adding games to the service. So with Nintendo, you never know what they're gonna add and when are they gonna add it. So moving on to the next one is the Xbox Game Pass. And with this, with the Game Pass, you get two tiers. You know, the Game Pass Core for $9.99 a month, and also Game Pass Ultimate for $16.99 a month. So with Game Pass Core, you get 25 games off the bat. They are most of them modern. There's some retro ones and stuff like that, but you could check out the full list in their website. And also with the Game Pass Core, you also get to play games online. You know, every service have that where you have to get that specific subscription in order to play online. Now the Game Pass Ultimate is where it's at. You get hundreds of games because, you know, you get access to play games from the original Xbox 360, my personal favorite, and also Xbox One, right? You also get new releases in this tier, like Starfield, for example, that just came out, right? They added day one to the service. You get to play cloud gaming, which right now it's really niche, but that's a good, you know, addition to that tier. And you also get the EA Play membership as well. So a lot of good stuff here in this tier. I would say if you never had an Xbox modern or in the past, this service is perfect because you get to play those games in the past, you know, in the past consoles that you might miss, or new titles that come to the Game Pass. You know, many people consider this the best service because of the day one releases, which it is hard to argue considering these games costing, you know, $70 or more, you know. So that is a great deal if you're looking for a game that's coming out new to the service and you want to check out, right? Now, some of the cons of this service is the games rotate every month, I believe. So if there's a game you want to play and it's leaving soon, you might feel pressured, you know, to play it before it's gone, or you won't be able to play it again unless they add it again to the rotation. So that's one of the bad things that on these services, PlayStation, Xbox as well, where they rotate their lineup, right? And unless you're in the loop, you won't know what they're gonna take off or put in, you know. Also, because Xbox itself lacks in first party, the majority of new games that come to the service are just, you know, third party. So if you're looking for more exclusives and first party games, then it might not be for you, especially if you already played most of the exclusives for Xbox, right? So that is a downside. But you can always just subscribe whenever you want to play that certain new game that you want to try, and then, you know, unsubscribe after. Basically like renting in a way, you know. That's what I do when a game interests me that's going to Game Pass day one, or they just added recently that I haven't played. You know, I'd rather just subscribe to the service, play the game, then unsubscribe whenever I want, right? So that's a really good thing there. And finally, let's go over the PS Plus service, because man, this service did change a lot in the few years. So they have three tiers. They have the Essential for $79.99 a year, the Extra tier for $134.99 a year, and finally the Premium tier for a whopping $159.99 a year. These prices are crazy. They just recently increased the price too, so this is with the price increase, and it's just crazy to see these numbers on a, you know, subscription service of video games. But, you know, let's go over the differences between the three tiers. So Essential is basically your basic tier, your standard tier that allows you to play games online just like any other subscription service that we mentioned so far, and you also get 3 random games each month that you could keep as long as you add them to your library. So that is pretty good, but again, we don't know. You won't know what they would add unless whenever they announce it. Maybe you don't like the games and stuff like that, but I mean, they're free games to try out, so that is a plus. But for $80, it's kind of tough, you know. Next, there's a PS Plus Extra tier, and in my opinion, this is the best of the options for the PS Plus subscription services, because you get a big catalog of games, and sometimes brand new day one games get added as well. Not as much or frequently as Game Pass, but you do get, sometimes you get those, you know, day one releases. So with this tier, you do get those 3 games that I just mentioned. With the Essential tier, you also get them here. Then you get more games in rotation extra from those, besides those 3 games that they add each month. So you get extra games in there, but those extra games do get rotated around. So again, this is like Game Pass Ultimate, where they do take off games put in games and stuff like that, right? Also with this tier, there is some classic games like Final Fantasy X, Final Fantasy VII. You know, I've seen some retro games added in there once in a while. So in my opinion, if you have a little extra to spend, since you're already paying, you know, $80 to basically just play online, why not just, you know, add the little bit of extra to get the PS Plus Extra, which is, in my opinion, like I said, the best tier of PS Plus. And finally, we have the premium tier, right? Which it's supposed to be the best tier, but they have been lacking on this tier, because with premium, you get cloud streaming, right? You get game trials, and the huge thing that makes premium is the classic catalog, where they add games from PS1, PS2, PS3, PSP, right? But for some reason, like I said, they've been lacking on this tier because we haven't gotten much games on there when it comes to the classic catalog, especially PS2 games, because yes, you see some PS2 games that have been added, but they're mostly just remastered versions that we already had on the PS4. So technically, yes, you do get PS2 games, but we all know we want those classic PS2 games that we haven't seen in years, right? That they haven't added on the PS4 or remastered, right? That's what we want to see. PS1 games are lacking, PSP games are lacking, and this is the majority of complaints that people have been saying with the premium tier. For that price, we should be getting more classic games. You know, this is what people want. So overall, for PS Plus, I recommend the extra tier, you know, because you get those games that I said, more modern and some old here and there. And especially if you never had a PlayStation, this is your first PlayStation, or maybe you did have a PlayStation but it's been a while, you know, you never had a PS4, stuff like that. This is a really great subscription services for you, because you get a lot of first party games that came out on the PS4, you know. And these exclusives, some of these exclusives you don't even get to play on anywhere else but on PlayStation. So you do get that advantage if you have not played, you know, games like that. But if you do have the service and you played all these games, maybe this service is not for you. I mean, I've seen talks of people complaining and also maybe even ending their subscription services because of the price increase. I mean, I'm amongst those people, but there is a little life hack. I mean, it's not really a life hack, people already know this, where you could game share. So basically you could do the same thing with the subscription services, where you could share that subscription service with a friend or a family member, as long as they add that account into their PlayStation 5, right? You could game share that way, or subscription share, and you could just go half on the price for the subscription service. So that is an option for you not to spend, you know, that much money, and you could share it that way. But with all that said, which service is the best service? I mean, honestly, it's all subjective at the end of the day, right? It all depends what you're looking for, because on one end, Xbox players think Game Pass is the best service out there because of how many new games they get added, right? But other people might disagree because the lack of first party editions, right? They've already played these third party games, they don't want to play them again, or they're not interested on these new third party games, they want exclusives more, right? Then you have PlayStation Plus, where you have more modern first party games added, but they lack on, like I said, the classic games that everyone wants, you know. And then finally, the Nintendo Switch Online, the most affordable option, but the lack of modern games, right? So it might not be what people are looking for. It's more for nostalgic purposes, or just people that have never played other Nintendo games from the past, you know. But what do you guys think? Do you have any of these subscription services? For me, the longest I've had was the Nintendo Switch Online, because I share it with my friends and family. So I only pay like $10 a month, a year. And I do have PS Plus right now with a friend. We did share that subscription service, but we are thinking of probably not subscribing anymore, because obviously this price increase is ridiculous, and we don't play that much online to begin with. So I don't know, we'll see what happens there. And then the Game Pass, you know, I did subscribe to it on my PC for when I see a game I want to play and I want to try out without purchasing it, right? I'd rather just get that service, the Game Pass, and basically try it out there. It's really convenient, you know. Like I said, you could just subscribe when there's a game that interests you on the Game Pass, and then unsubscribe if there's no use for it right later. I mean, it's up to you. But all these subscription services, they have their own pros and cons. It's all up to you what you prefer and stuff like that. But let me know in the comments what y'all think of this, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.